Occasionally, we are privileged enough to honor and examine the craft of one of the acknowledged leaders of a generation. Our guest has made us look at ourselves, cry, and laugh like a child. In an array of films from Schindler's List, Jurassic Park, E.T., Minority Report, to Saving Private Ryan, our guest has won 3 Academy Awards and has been nominated for many more. The Actors Studio is extremely honored to welcome Steven Spielberg.
Hi. It's really such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, for starters, can you tell us a bit about your childhood, since so much of your work seems to be revolving around your childhood?
Well, for starters, I was born December 18th, 1946, so pretty old. And I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
And how was it growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio?
To be honest, it was kind of rough. I was somewhat of an outsider because of the fact that I was such an awkward kid, you know? I was that kid in band that played the clarinet, and I wasn't at all good at sports, so you can see how well I fit in. And on top of it all, I was bullied for being a member of a Jewish family in an extremely non-Jewish neighborhood. And this is very hard for me to talk about because for so long I struggled with my Jewish identity. Heck, I even have memories of me being a kid and completely ignoring my grandpa calling me for dinner because I didn't want my friends to know he was my grandpa.
And in a recent interview, you did say that you recently found out you were diagnosed with dyslexia. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, my diagnosis came pretty late in life compared to most people, but it was honestly the last puzzle piece to the great mystery that is me. It helped me understand why I struggled so much as a boy and why I felt like I didn't fit in at all. I realized this because some things it took me about 2.5 hours to read that it would generally take people about 45 minutes. I was never really ashamed of my dyslexia. It was just something that I had learned to adjust to. And one way that I adjusted was making films. Making films was where I truly felt comfortable with my skill sets.
Okay, enough about your childhood. Let's talk about your film career. It is quite uncommon for a director to have films that are both successfully critically and commercially. You have had several. You have made films in many different genres, and many of them have had great success. From Jurassic Park to E.T. to Indiana Jones, you have had extremely successful action and fantasy movies.
Well, thank you so much for that. First off, honestly, for the beginning of my career, I focused a lot on films that were almost escapist and that they were centered around children. A lot of my life I felt like I was escaping from my Jewish identity, and this has become readily apparent in many of my films. But
Of course.
in the beginning, I didn't feel comfortable touching on the more important matter of life, which are what's obviously discussed in my later films.
So how did it feel transitioning between these more escapist films and into the more provocative films?
Well, it was very gratifying. For example, Schindler's List is probably the most gratifying and satisfying film I've ever made because I just felt that it was a story that truly had to be told. This was the first time that I truly felt comfortable with who I was as a Jewish man in Hollywood. And I just felt that it was a story that I needed to tell because I wanted people to hear it. I didn't make it because I wanted to make money or win awards. I made it because it needed to be made.
Great. Well, I think we all agree this was one of the best interviews we've ever had, Mr. Spielberg.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Now, also tonight will be Johnny Depp. Stay tuned.